Wonderful.
Yeah.
You were sort of on the fence whether you were going to read. I'm so glad you read. And we do this every month. So come on back and read some more poems. This thing is falling apart now. I pity whoever gets up here next. I'm sorry. We're gonna make it just right.
Just don't touch it.
Don't even look at it. So, Michael Salcman, check this out. I don't read bios like this every day. Michael Salcman was chairman of neurosurgery at the University of Maryland and president of the Contemporary Museum in Baltimore. Necessary Speech, New and Selected Poems is his brand new book from Spuyten Duyvil, 2022. It's his 10th book of poems. Stefan has encouraged me to note that he has a new poem in the current issue of Smartish Pace. Salcman is a poetry editor for the Baltimore Review and special lecturer in the Osher Institute at Towson University. And Stefan, I think, was eager to date himself, so he included this tidbit. Michael last read for Smartish Pace 6,392 days ago, 17 years ago, which was October 9, 2004, at the Contemporary Museum of Art, when he read with Gaylord Brewer, Joyce Brown, and Marilyn L. Taylor, just for the record. We're really thrilled that he's here to read for us. Please welcome Michael Salcman. Oh, yeah, I got you. Just sit comfortably and we'll get you on the air.
Thank you. It's great to be back. My book that came out a couple of years ago was the subject of virtual reading here. That's about as close as we got. Necessary Speech is a new and selected, and I'm going to read a few of the newer poems, and then just a couple of poems from the previous books. So it has basically 85 pages of new poems as if it were a new collection. And then there are a couple of hundred pages devoted to the first four collections. The opening poem, Necessary Speech, was put together during my wife's and our 50th anniversary, and during that year. And the poem begins the book. It's called Because. I tell her more often now because she is ageless and I'm over 70. Because it's the same girl's face I first got to know 50 years ago with the same sunburst of energy. Because starting out together was predictable, but the end of either one may come like a ballooning shadow. Because so many things people say have indefinite meanings, but these three words are ever unambiguous. Because I have breath enough to say them yet, and she has generously listened. Because she is not a cat, and I am not a dog. So the first section of the new poems, often, this is true in my books, it's about family history and my father and so forth, but I'm going to, for the sake of not freezing to death, I'm going to skip that section. The second section is entirely plague poems, what I call plague poems. They're all about the epidemic, but they're about the epidemic in the way that works, which is I don't even mention COVID, I don't mention the virus, but they're all things that happened during that time. And the opening poem, and I wrote an article, a letter to the Times about this, it amazed me that in their discussion of this problem, which is that people don't want to read novels that are about the epidemic, we've lived through it, who needs to read about it? And the greatest book ever written about a plague was by Camus in the late 40s when there was no plague. He invented the plague, and he predicted pretty much all of the behaviors that we've seen in ourselves and in others during this time. So the narrator, if you've never read The Plague, the narrator is the kind of leading physician in the book, Dr. Rieux. And this poem is called A Poem by Dr. Rieux, or as one of my friends said, or Dr. Seuss meets the apocalypse. In quarantine, it seemed the obvious thing to do. All of us read The Plague by Albert Camus. But for a critical cow outside the gates going moo, and silent birds flying above our city zoo, not many felt disappointed or filled with rue, spending our days with The Plague by Albert Camus. When the bill for arrogance and greed came due, we paid more in pride than vouchers, it's true. What a poor exchange we had made for social glue. Blindness and spite from The Plague by Albert Camus. No more trips to the gym or standing in queues. No unmasked meetings beyond casual ones and twos. No enlightenment came on slow walks to the loo, as was foreseen in The Plague by Albert Camus. Now, this is just going to take a little bit of explanation. I've written many, many ekphrastic poems over the years, and there's a large section of ekphrastic poems in the Confetti of Confetti, my first collection. And we have in our house a circular painting. Circular paintings are called tondos, as you would have seen in the Renaissance with Michelangelo, for example. And it has just two colors. It has a scimitar of orange along the side, and the main part of the tondo is all green, intense green. And the title by Leon Pope Smith, who was the artist, 1967, Correspondence, Deep Yellow-Green. There are only two possibilities. Either the shadow of an orange sun is fallen on the green earth, or an orange moon is partially occluded by a green sun. Either the orange scimitar is turning around a green ball, or the ball is spinning out of an orange disc. Either everything is moving, or everything is still. There are only two possibilities. So whilst I closed my medical practice after 50 years, during the year that we put this book together, and I thought JAMA had never had a poem like this. I wrote a poem specifically for the Journal of the American Medical Association called Lives Before Retirement. The last patient lies to me, of course, about never having had headaches before, about not being depressed, about how well he slept before the accident, before he fell on a wet floor at work and tapped the left side of his head like a finger on a desk. The lawyers for my last deposition shaved the truth as smooth as a peach, of course. I'm closing the store. Soon I will take down all my diplomas, gaudy posters of 70s art shows, and a few certificates of competence. No one, including myself, can guess what I feel, beavering after truth. A half-century of healing ended, mirroring the hardships of others, stripping away layers of falsehoods like a detective with a scalpel, digging at fears we hold in common. Talk made of Confetti, besides ekphrastic poems, I'm going to skip Sitting Schmear, but had 9/11 poems in it that you can find also in the Library of Congress website for that. And one of the poems in the Clock Made of Confetti is a sonnet in 7 pairs of rhyming couplets that I wish I could write another poem like this, but it has never happened to me. And it was about the necessity for killing foreign swans on Chesapeake Bay. And a lamentation is a group of swans, like a pod of whales or a pack of hounds. It's the middle-aged term for a group of swans. A lamentation of swans. Like immortal cells growing in a dish, the alien swans multiply beyond our wish for silent beauty. And the buried day rises as a dream. How to kill the mute swans, its theme. One Tchaikovsky never penned is now debated in shoreside bars and fens by oystermen who lift their glasses in sad farewell to black skimmers and underwater grasses. They mourn the native tundra swan and least turn before it too is gone. And if alien beauty must be trapped or shot or poisoned, its nested eggs addled not to hatch, they're willing to concede how often beauty breeds dark necessity. This became, I forget, on one of those poetry daily things sites, the Father's Day poem one year. It's called Cutting Apples. My father always carried a penknife to pare his green apples, raising their skins in perfect spirals. He never drew blood slicing his bananas for breakfast, their dark-seated cores like little faces, dropping into the milk, one more item in a life of 1,000 chores, one more notch in a life advancing by millimeters or inches, not seconds or days. I watched him turn himself as carefully away from violence as a lathe on a table leg, cutting each curve and flourish from the flat face of a block clamped in his hand. His hand and its thumb never shied from the blade. He knew that what you do with any tool gives it its value, like a life, not too eager or afraid. That I have appeared in her journal once, and it's about a painting in the Baltimore Museum of Art. It was sort of commissioned by them, and it's a persona poem, so you'll have to forgive me because I don't know the accent of dogs very well. It's called The Dog Speaks, Interior with Dog by Matisse, 1934. I'm only half asleep, so I know you're standing there, wondering if I'm asleep. No, it's not easy to rest under this table. For one thing, there's a strong downward slope, and gravity's got me half tipped out of my basket like an apple by Cezanne. Talk about a flat world. For another, I can't get away from these colors, the red floor tiles, orange table leg, and pink wall burning on my lids like the sun. Then again, I'm never alone. The kids think a great dog is cute, and I'm the only dog in the room. I was bribed, that's my excuse, with a bone and a bowl of fresh water. Really, I wish you wouldn't stare. It's extra hard to be an icon when you're not an odalisque and have no hair. Here's the inside note. He wore a vest when he painted them, but saved his housecoat for me. I liked sitting for him. He was never rude and spared me his violin. I think I look very dignified, not naked, just nude. And I'm going to read just 2 more poems. The first one gave the title to Shades and Graces. It's about the first family members, the few. I was born in Europe right after the war. most of my family was extinguished in the Holocaust. There were these distant cousins who had moved to America before the Second World War. And it's called The Three Rices. Shades and graces come in threes. My cousins and queens were aunt and uncle to me. First I knew as elderly, rich with sandpaper faces, and thin-rimmed glasses they wore like monocles. My first lesson in the upper classes, a tinted portrait above the mantel, where Hetty and Sid and Uncle Carl were posed as kids, in white smocks with puffy sleeves, big as their heads, and a favorite spaniel for color. Upstairs, their sentient mother lived in solitary splendor. My father's Aunt Rose, already 100 when I was 5, whose backside routinely greeted me freshly bathed and powdered with a faint smell of garlic and uric acid in Queens. Sid's husband I never knew or can't remember, and soon after he died, she moved back in with the other two, and seemed as much a spinster as they ever did, eternally wed to brother and sister. Of the past, not a word was spoken. One could never know how Hetty's young heart had been broken, or why Carl, with a smile like Coolidge, never pursued a bride, or wore sweaters in summer until the day he died. And this is also a poem from Shades and Graces. And it's a wonderful word that was, I think, rubber stamped by Tennessee Williams and became one of his words and impossible for anybody else to use. And I really don't know what its meaning was all these years, believe it or not. The poem is called Mendacity. And I like from time to time to write definitional poems. And I noticed something about mendacity as a word, which would be all obvious to you. Mendacity. To mend is at the center of it. To make whole the rip in the world by stitching it up with lies. There are never enough for all the rents and hollowness, the empty caverns of unpleasant facts. Menelaus, that ancient king, had need of lives as smooth as Helen's back. His family's adultery, incest, and cannibalism much on his mind, his own wife's faithlessness, and the war. And not just kings, but scribes, who wish the world were otherwise, and make it so with lies.
Thank you, Michael. So good to hear your new and old poems. So good to hear you read again after 17 years. I mean, the reading, I remember that reading from 17 years ago was wonderful. You're such a captivating and skilled reader, and today was better than 17 years ago. So thank you.